Good afternoon, this is Reese with SCA Construction. I just wanted to go over this pond that we're looking at. It's in a strip shopping mall and it's pretty big and it's got some unique features and a couple different issues. And I wanted to take y'all through what the process of inspection looks like, what I typically look for, and then as far as a report and a scope of work, what y'all might expect. So let's go ahead and dive in. So first thing to notice coming in here, you can see the actual property that's over there, and this is obviously the property line. Now, I don't believe that this is in the property and a part of this pond, just because their inlets do not go to there. However, just a couple things to notice walking in. You can see water has been pooling over here. It looks like this section has ended up settling over time. And if you look underneath it, big void and a bunch of washout over there, that's probably about 8 feet wide, 10 feet long, and does need to be shored up. Maybe we could talk to the neighbors about that. I'm walking down to the bottom of the pond, and typically we start there just because it's the absolute lowest point. And so kind of like if you had a plug on the end of a straw, it's going to clog up everything upstream. And so it's always good practice to start there first and see if there's something simple. And sometimes you get lucky and the orifice, which is the bottom portion of the outlet control structure, which lets out the water flow. Sometimes there's a 2-liter Coke bottle stuck in there and you can just pull it out and the whole thing drains. That's best case scenario. Not this case scenario, but something to look for first. So you can obviously see this is a shopping mall, hence the shopping cart. But following this riprap channel coming up here, you can see where water is getting stopped up a little bit here. It just needs to be unclogged in the riprap. Not too big of a deal. But coming over to the outlet control structure, this is actually just a really big poured concrete wall instead of an earthen dam like sometimes you see on smaller properties. They didn't have the space to do an earthen dam, so they just did this. It's like 2 feet of concrete up there. But this is their spillway, and so you can obviously see these big wing walls coming off, and that is the slow release. And so they've also got this guy right here, which it's actually just something to basically flap up once water gets to around here or in emergency conditions. And there's actually is a little bit of crack in it, so water's getting through there right now, which we need to fix. But you can also see the slow release orifice down here, which is typically where water in normal conditions is going to bleed out of until it's supposed to get to this point. Now, we've got to see the as-built and make sure that that's the actual purpose of this. It might only be in flood conditions, and it might also be to just lift it up and drain the pond if you had to do maintenance. But until we see the as-built, we won't know for sure. Now, one thing to look at here, this is supposed to be the plunge pool, so it is okay if there's a little bit of water in here, but not too much. But you can see where it's really, really deep right here, and that's not exactly perfect. And so you can see the foundation where they poured the concrete, it's really eroded away, and the water has beat it up over time. And it looks like there's actually about a foot underneath that concrete that has washed away. And so we do want to get that fixed. We do want to grout underneath it and make sure it's packed back and then reinstall riprap in this area, maybe something a little bit heavier than the type 3 that is here right now, just to make sure that the structural integrity of this isn't compromised in the future and it's not going to become an issue. So walking up the side of the pond, you typically want to have, it's different in every municipality, but at least here in Georgia, in most municipalities, it's going to be a requirement to have 10 feet of vegetation cleared off the back of the dam. Whether that is an earthen dam at the toe, or in this case, a concrete wall, we want to make sure that's all cleared out and there's no big trees that are going to get grown up here and then rip off the big root ball in a storm and then compromise the wall. And so now they've done a pretty good job here. This isn't too concerning. We need to get a little bit of this chopped up and some of these guys growing here taken out. But other than that, they're doing pretty good. So taking a look from the bird's eye view, you can see how thick this concrete is. It's pretty crazy, but it is a pretty tall wall. You can see a little bit more what I was talking about with the undermining going on right there and where some riprap does need to be replaced and where this is going to drain quite a bit once we clear out some of that stuff down there. Now, a lot of ponds do have a structure in front of the outlet that is supposed to ensure that trash and huge pieces of debris don't get all clogged up. They can serve a couple different purposes. We've even seen sand filters where there's a small retaining wall with physical sand, for more heavy oil prone places, like automotive plants and car manufacturers and stuff like that. But we'll take a look at the as-built, see what's going on with this one. But it's a similar structure, and you can see where that is actually that smaller pipe that we saw on the backside. That's the slow release orifice, and so you can see water is getting to it. hence the path and where dirt's all washed out. But we do need to get a lot of this stuff cleared out just to make sure it's got a clear path to get to. And under normal conditions, it's not going to hold any water. And then it's pretty built up right here. We'll go down there in a minute. But there are some sticks, debris, and things that need to be cleared out as well. And then on this bank, all of these trees do need to be cut down. It looks like a couple of them were planted pines maybe a long time ago, but most likely they just grew over time after the development was finished. But again, similar to what we explained on the backside, we need to get these cut because if it was a big storm or it was heavy conditions and for whatever reason any of these got ripped off, this is not on the dam side of the pond, but it's still important to make sure they didn't fall over, block something up, not to compromise the stability of their parking lot in that bank. That's a little bit more about what you can see from walking around the pond and just going around the back of the dam. And the first things you should look for, but you really don't know the real problems and the intricacies of it until you get inside the pond. So let's go ahead and walk down, and I'm gonna try and dodge some thorns. You know, I get asked a lot if there are snakes in these ponds, and the answer is yes, there are absolutely snakes in these ponds. But in luck for you guys, snakes are afraid of SCA staff, and so you are in good hands. So another thing we look for when we're walking around the bottom of the pond is where water's cutting through, and it gives us an indication of, you know, what the sediment level should be, you know, in relation to the slow release down there. And as you can see, there's a solid 1.5 to 2 feet that is at the bottom of this. And then same thing over here. I mean, it's pretty significant. And so, again, it's not the worst thing we've ever seen. If it's a budgetary constraint, they could get away with just removing the stuff back there as far as a priority, but it will need to be removed at some point. Another major thing to identify is going to be the inlets of the pond. Sometimes there's only one on smaller ponds, sometimes there's 5 or 6. But in this case, there is 2 concrete pipes, one of them being right here, that comes from an auxiliary side of the parking lot that's not really connected to the rest of it. And then the others are in the promised land behind all this kind of stuff back here. So let's go take a look. I wear camo boots so the competition can't see me. So looking at all this, you can see all this super overgrown vegetation that is about as tall as I am. Again, it's not super thick diameter stuff that's been here forever, like some of these trees. However, it does need to be cut down and maintained. But looking over at the inlets, the main ones, so we've got this big, large diameter corrugated metal pipe, another concrete inlet pipe that's a little bit bigger than the last one we looked at, and all of these are coming from the parking lot outside. And so one thing that is a little bit more unique is the concrete wall that comes throughout here. And one thing I really want you guys to pay attention to is the slow release orifice that's actually on the bottom of that, and it's also full of water. There's maybe about 1 inch up there that is that's still there. However, it's underwater. And I want that to be an important point that y'all take away from this, because when you see that, that is an indicator of where the sediment and water level should be in this pond. Now, I'll get over there in a minute, but you really want to have that free and clear, because what's happening right now is this is all filled up. There's a bunch of stuff in it, sediment that's come in, and now there's stuff growing on it, and it's not really doing its job of catching trash and catching sediment as a forebay. So just so the rest of this thing doesn't get clogged, this is supposed to be an easy area to do routine maintenance on that keeps the rest of it very, very clean. Just another look, you can see how high all this stuff is. I mean, that's probably a solid 2.5 feet at that point. And some of it may, from the original development, sloughed off that bank back there, but a lot of it is just coming in through all these pipes. And as a result of years of cutting this stuff down and then leaving the thatch there, it decomposes, builds up. It's a combination of all those things, but you can see how built up it is. And now that you see that slow release orifice down there, the water level should be underneath this. And obviously all of this stuff should also be underneath that. And so as far as elevation goes, this is going to be a little bit higher than the slow release orifice back there in the corner that we were at before. So you can see right up next to the inlets. So this pool, obviously the concrete wall back there, this is about 3.5 feet of water, which is a little bit hard to tell in the video. And I'm standing on a huge built up sediment bank that should not be here. And another thing, walking back over to this wall, you know, you can see how it's supposed to be about 3 feet deep, but this is also full of sediment. So maybe 2.5, 3 feet plus or minus. We'll look at the as-built, but all that sediment built up against this wall, which is probably clogging the slow release structure at the bottom that we looked at. It's not doing its job. Water is just flowing over it, and it might as well not even be here. So need to get this part cleaned up for sure. That's going to be a priority. And so that is going to make sense once all this is cleaned out It can catch the trash, catch the sediment, and then we can also clean out and do our due diligence of maintenance. So one last thing to inspect while we're down here is the condition of the pipes. It's a little bit too deep to walk in, but as you can see, this pipe was actually lined at some point in the past, just because it looks to be maybe a little bit of live water coming through here. There's a little bit of flow, and it hasn't rained in a couple days. But you can see it's not rusted out on the bottom, probably as a result of the lining. And obviously this concrete pipe is in pretty decent shape. You can see this collar has a little bit of cracking on it, which doesn't seem to be too big of a deal. I was up there earlier and there does not appear to be any sinking. Probably be smart to grout it just in case. But the corrugated metal pipe, which is typically the culprit of really, really big issues and capital expenditures and this kind of thing, it seems to be in good shape. So that's very good. We'll take a look up there just to double check. But that is going to be it for looking inside the bottom of the pond. All right, well, that concludes today's inspection. And so we're going to take these photos, descriptions, and what we found back to the office and take a look at the as-built drawings just to make sure we're not missing anything and we understand the full design of the pond to our best ability. We're going to put together a scope of work, a price, and then have a conversation with the owner on what the next steps are. So if you guys have a pond like this or a different pond or have any kind of stormwater related issues that you want us to take a look at, please visit our website at sca.construction or leave a comment in the section below. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.